Good morning, everyone. Good morning, sir. So, we are the group Yellow, Green, and the White. So, today we're going to present our learning plan. So, our learning plan title is all about the interactive learning plan. So, the proponents is, yes, the group Yellow, Green, and the White. Our learning areas is the Math Grade 9, fourth quarter, and we have five days of learning plan. So the content standards is the learner demonstrate understanding of the basic concept of trigonometry. So for the performance standards, the learner is able to apply the concept of trigonometric ratios to formulate and solve real life problems with precision and accuracy. So for the parts of the learning plan, so we have the day and time, learning competencies, learning tasks, which has four types. It is the conceptualizations, discussions, independent practice, assessment, and the last is the ICT integrations, which is the hardware and the software. So for the day one, which is the Monday from 8:30 to 10 a.m., the learning competencies is this illustrates the six trigonometric ratios sine, cosine, tangent, secant, cosecant, and cotangent. For the contextualizations, the students will be given 15 minutes to look for a tree inside the campus and find its height using a trigonometric ratio. Draw an illustration and explain how the height of the tree was computed. So for the discussions, the teacher will present a PowerPoint presentations and have a discussions about the topic. So the students will have an independent practice, which is the teacher will conduct an oral recitations about the topic. For the assessment, the teacher will give a quiz, and for the ICT integrations, i- in in the hardware part, the teacher will use laptop and projectors. In the software, the teacher will use PowerPoint presentations in presenting the lesson. So for the day 2, which is Tuesday from 8:30 a.m. to 10 a.m., so the learning competencies is finds the trigonometric ratios of special angles. So in the learning task, so contextualizations, students will be grouped into five groups. Each group must write a real life problem that can be solved using 30 degrees, 60 degree, 90-degree triangle with a 12-meter hypotenuse. Illustrate the problem with complete solutions. For the discussions, the teacher will show a short clip that has a connection to real life situations related to that topic. For the independent practice, the students will have a group discussions. In terms of the assessment, students will be given an assessment that corresponds to the respective lessons. For the ICT integrations in hardware, so where the teacher will use laptop and projectors. For software, the teacher will use PowerPoint presentations or other application in presenting the video.
So, for day 3, which is Wednesday, 8:30 to 10 a.m., the learning competency is illustrate angles of elevation and angles of depression. So, for the contextualization, students will find their pair, then pick one person to measure his or her height as well as the length of her or his shadow. Then, using the appropriate trigonometric ratio, find the angle elevation and sketch the picture. Then, for discussion, the teacher will discuss the lesson through PowerPoint presentation. Then for independent practice, The student will present their outputs in front of the class and give a statement that relates the topic. Then for assessment, the teacher will give written exam. For the hardware, the teacher will use laptop and projector. The software, the teacher will use PowerPoint presentation or other applications in presenting the lesson. For day 4, which is Thursday, 8:30 a.m. to 10 a.m. So the learning competency is uses trigonometric ratios to solve real-life problems involving right triangles. For contextualization, students tasked to write a problem that involves right triangle using the situations found in the school and provide solutions to this problem. For the discussion, the teacher will present and discuss the lesson using PowerPoint presentation. Then for the independent practice, the teacher will discuss the answer of the problem. For assessment, the teacher will give a problem solving exam. Then for the hardware, the teacher will use laptop and projector. For the software, the teacher will use PowerPoint presentation or other application in presenting the lesson.
So in day 5, Friday, for learning competency is illustrates law of sines and cosines. Learning task for the contextualization, the teacher will provide an illustration, then the students will create a problem situation based on what they see in the illustration, and they're going to present a solution to the problem they made. For the discussion, the teacher will present and discuss the lesson using PowerPoint presentation. For the independent practice, the teacher will present a video showing the answers of their activity and explain it to the class. And for the assessment, the teacher will give a long exam. In ICT integration, for the hardware, the teacher will use laptop and projector. And for the software, the teacher will use PowerPoint presentation or other applications in presenting the lesson.
So for in part 2, we have 5 days of our learning plan. And the first day is, uh, our first day of the learning competency is illustrates the six trigonometric ratios, sine, cosine, tangent, secant, cosecant, and cotangent. And for the specific daily learning outcomes is the learner can discuss the six trigonometric ratios. The learner can identify the six trigonometric ratios. And for our daily procedures, first is we start the class with a prayer. And next is the teacher will have a roll call in each student alphabetically. And then we present the objectives. And for our objective of the day one, we will discuss the trigonometric ratios, identified the six trigonometric ratios. And for our lesson, we will have a review. So the teacher will ask the following questions to test the students if they remember the past lessons. And the teacher will ask the class about the previous lesson, what they learned in the previous lesson, ask the student if they really learned the past lessons. And for a motivation, we will introduce the game called 4 Picks 1 Word. Using the images used about trigonometric ratios, let the students guess what is the hidden word. And for our discussion, the teacher will start the discussion with a video presentation using a projector about the six trigonometric ratios. And during the discussion of the lesson, the teacher will use a PowerPoint presentation as an instructional material. And next, for our activities, the students will be given 15 minutes to look for tree inside the campus, then find its height using a trigonometric ratio, and then draw an illustration and explain how the height of the tree was computed. And then the teacher will elaborate the discussion and will ask the student if they have any question regarding the topic discussed, and the teacher will then clarify, elaborate, and expound the part of the lesson that students ask. And lastly, for the assessment, the teacher will give a quiz to assess the students' learning outcomes, and that would be all. And for the day two, and the learning competency for the day two is finds the trigonometric ratios of special angles. The learner, and for our learning, uh, the learner can solve the trigonometric ratios special angles. The learner can discuss the trigonometric ratios or special angles. And for our preparation, we start with a prayer. And just as before, we will check the students' attendance, and then we will present the objectives of day two. For the day two's objective, we have the students must be able to solve the trigonometric ratios of special angles. Second is discuss the trigonometric ratios of special angles. And for our lesson, proper, we will review that teacher will ask the following questions. If the students remember the lesson about trigonometric ratios of special angles. What is the lesson about in the previous meeting? What did you learn in the previous lesson? What skill or knowledge did you learn or gain in the past lesson? And for our motivation, we will introduce the game called Bingo-matics or Mat Bingo. So the mechanics of the game is create a group consisting 5 members. The first group who gets a straight line, either diagonal, horizontal, or vertical, in a 4x4 bingo is declared the winner. And we will go into the discussion. For the discussion, the teacher will show a short clip that has connection to real life situation related to the trigonometric ratios of special angles. And for our activities, the students will be grouped into 5 groups, and each group must write a real life problem that can be solved using a 30-degree, 60-degree, 90-degree triangle with a 12-meter hypotenuse, and then they will illustrate the problem with complete solutions. So next, the teacher will ask the students if they have any questions regarding the topic discussed, and then the teacher will then clarify, elaborate, and expand the part of the lesson that the students ask. And then lastly, the teacher will assess the students, and they will be given an assignment that corresponds to their respective lesson.
For the learning competency is illustrate angles of elevation and angles of depression. And then for the specific daily learning outcomes, the learner can calculate the angles of elevation and angles of depression. Second is the learner can examine the angles of elevation and angles of depression. For the daily procedures, for the preparation, the class will start with a prayer. Next, the teacher will have a roll call in each student alphabetically. Next is the presentation of the objectives. The first objective is calculate the angles of elevation and angles of depression. Second is examine the angles of elevation and angles of depression. For the lesson proper, The teacher will ask the following questions to test the students if they remember the lesson about the trigonometric ratios of special angles. What is the lesson about the previous meeting? What did you learn in the previous lesson? What skill or knowledge did you gain in the past lessons? For the motivation, the teacher will introduce the game called Ken Ken Puzzle. The game functions just like the crossword puzzle, but modified into a more mathematical game. Then the students will calculate the angles of elevation and angles of depression. For the discussion, the teacher will discuss the lesson through PowerPoint presentation. After the discussion, activities will be given. The teacher will pair the students, then pick one person to measure his or her height as well as the length of her or his shadow. Then, using the appropriate trigonometric ratio, find the angle, elevation, and sketch the picture. Then the teacher will ask the students if they have any questions regarding the topic discussed. The teacher will then clarify, elaborate, and expound the part of the lessons that the students asked. For the assessment, using a one whole sheet of paper, the teacher will give a written exam. And then for the day 4, the learning competencies uses trigonometric ratios to solve real-life problems involving right triangles. For the specific daily learning outcomes, the learner can examine real-life problems involving right triangles, and the learner can solve real-life problems involving right triangles using trigonometric ratios. For the preparation, the start will class with a prayer, and then the teacher will have a roll call in each student alphabetically, then present the objectives. The first objective is examine real-life problems involving right triangles, solve real-life problems involving right triangles using trigonometric ratios. For the lesson proper, the teacher will ask the following questions to test the students if they remember the lesson about angles of elevation and angles of depression. First is what is the lesson about in the previous meeting? What did you learn in the previous lesson? What skill or knowledge did you gain in the past lessons? For the motivation, the teacher will introduce the game called Hangman. Each student will write their answer in a one-fourth sheet of paper. The students will be given some clues and guess the word or phrases about trigonometric ratios and right triangles. The students who get the highest score will be given a reward. For the discussion, the teacher will present and discuss the lesson using the PowerPoint presentation. And for the activities, the teacher will group the students with 5 members each. Then the students will present a real life problem about right triangles, and then they need to find a solution to the problem. For further elaboration, the teacher will ask the students if they have any questions regarding the topic discussed. The teacher will then clarify, elaborate, and expound the part of the lesson that the students asked. For the assessment, in a one whole sheet of paper, the students will answer a problem solving exam.
So for the day 5, the learning competency illustrates law of sines and cosines. Then for the specific daily learning outcomes, the learner can determine and examine the laws of sines and cosines. The learner can calculate sines and cosines. For the daily procedures, the class will start in a prayer, then by checking the attendance. So for the objectives, at the end of the discussion, the students must be able to illustrates laws of sines and cosines, calculate sines and cosines, examine the difference between sines and cosines. For the lesson proper, the teacher will ask the following question to test the students if they remember the past lessons. Ask the class about the previous lesson, what they learned in the previous lesson, and ask the students if they really learned the past lessons. So for the motivation, instruct students to take notes on the facts about the law of science learned thus far in the video. For each of the practice problems, the teacher will pause the video just before answer is given and allow students to solve the problem on the board before the class views the answer. Instruct everyone else to solve problem on their own paper while it is being solved on the board. So for the discussion, present the discussion by a PowerPoint presentation. It can be through Canva. After the lesson summary, conduct a final class discussion to clarify remaining questions. So for the activities, make the class into 5 groups. So the instructions, cut rectangular strips of random length out of blue paper, label each with its exact measure. Cut rectangular strips of random length out of red paper. Label the red paper strips with a code. It could be alphabetical, and keep an answer keep with the lengths of the red strips matched to the codes. So you can have students create their own blue strips, but be watchful for groups using a ruler to measure the red strips instead of finding the measure through the use of the law of sines operations. For the elaborate, the students will ask some clarification about the laws of sines and cosines. Then the teacher will answer the queries of the students for them to better understand the lesson. And for the assessment, by the next class session by the teacher, she will give a long quiz of the said lessons, the laws of sines and cosines. So this will end the lessons by the day 5. So thank you for listening.